I love symmetrical boxy shapes and straight lines, and the XZ1 proudly embraces everything that Sony's design stands for. I was also delighted to find that the attention to detail and the fit and finish on this phone is, I think, the best I've seen on any phone so far. The way the smooth metal backplate curves around the back all the way to the display, the beautifully recessed power button, the exquisite antenna lines, the subtle but gorgeous texture on the back, the engraved Xperia logo, the elegant color options, everything. The craftsmanship here is just incredible. Honestly, go to a store, experience this for yourself, and you will absolutely know what I mean. Oh, and as a bonus, it is of course also waterproof. Sadly though, none of the craftsmanship in the world could save the XZ1 from its most obvious flaw. Put it next to, say, the LG G6 and you will instantly know what I mean. The G6 has a significantly larger and higher resolution screen, a significantly larger battery, and even 2 cameras instead of 1, and yet the two phones have about the same height and width, but the LG even manages to be slightly narrower. That just shouldn't be possible, and I was one of the few people who gave Sony a break for refining their existing design instead of throwing it away for something new. But man, this is 2017, it is the year of crazy big screens and crazy small phones, and the Xperia feels very outdated in this respect. The screen itself is a 5.2-inch Full HD LCD panel that gets super bright, supports HDR, has great colors, all of which is to say that it's great. So if it wasn't for the bezels around it, I wouldn't have anything to complain about. Sony is also one of the only smartphone makers left that did not opt for a dual camera setup, and on paper that is not necessarily bad. I mean, I would much rather have one camera that works well than 2 that don't. Essential. But just like every year, they again showed off some really cool camera tricks. The 19 megapixel sensor has a not too impressive f2.0 aperture, and sadly no optical image stabilization, but comes with boatloads of cool features. The same out of this world 960 FPS slow motion feature from the last generation is still present. Sony has some impressive autofocus tricks, and Sony's electronic image stabilization for videos is still one of the best in the industry. The most impressive new trick this year, however, seems to be the ability to scan objects, and I can totally see why everyone was raving about it. It works well, it's quirky, and it's just a ton of fun to play around with. Now, as for the regular camera experience, I still love that the app launches instantly with the excellent camera button, and during my brief hands-on with the phone, I have found that photos in general look maybe not amazing, but quite good. They have decent dynamic range, good colors, and are usually plenty sharp. Like on previous Sony phones as well, I find that the good first impression fades a little as you start pixel peeping, but overall photos are still quite nice. Low light photos in auto mode aren't bad either. You can't rely on increasing the shutter speed too much due to the lack of optical image stabilization, but this camera handles high ISO ranges like it's no big deal. This photo was taken at ISO 3200 and to me it looks just fine, which is a rare thing to say. A recurring issue I have with Sony phones sadly also makes a comeback here. Looking at this shot of my carpet, I can demonstrate what I mean. The sharpness of the lens falls off as you move from the center. So while details such as the individual stitches are visible in the center, they become much more washed out on the edges, and it's sadly pretty visible in some regular photos as well. Overall though, I found that image quality was good, yet not amazing, but all the tricks like object scanning and slow motion video meant that the XZ1 can do things that no other phone on the market can, and I really dig that Sony is trying new things. The rest of the specs are what you'd expect from a Sony flagship smartphone. It's a Snapdragon 835, 4GB of RAM, and 64GB of expandable storage that you'll find on nearly any recent Android flagship. But unlike other flagships, the XZ1 has a dangerously small 2700 mAh battery. I mean, maybe the power-efficient Snapdragon processor will help it get through a day on a full charge, but it's just crazy to me that they couldn't fit a bigger unit into a phone this big. The software is very similar to what you'd find on other Sony flagship smartphones as well, which is to say that it's nice, clean, and performs very well. The big news here though is that this will apparently be the first phone to launch with Android O on board. So good job Sony. Audio quality was a clear area of focus on the XZ1 as well. And Sony promises great quality whether you listen on wired or Bluetooth headphones with inclusions like LDAC, which is Sony's improved Bluetooth technology. Sadly, while the phone comes with front-firing speakers, I found that the sound quality from these speakers is actually below average with very little bass. Overall then, it seems to me like Sony is once again ignoring all of the trends like small bezels and dual cameras and seems to live in its own little bubble. Some of the stuff they bring to the table, like their camera tricks and their excellent craftsmanship, are genuinely awesome, and even for the expected 699 euros, I wouldn't call you crazy for picking this phone as your next flagship. But I also feel like if Sony wants to sell Xperia phones to anyone else but Xperia fans, maybe they could also sometimes, move with the times a little. Put a bigger battery in there, make the bezel smaller, or the screen bigger, or something along those lines.
With each new version of Android, we all look out for that big front-facing changes that alter the way the OS looks or works in a big way, but for every major new feature, there are countless smaller hidden ones that altogether add up to a better experience. That's why we're taking a look at the top hidden features found within Android Oreo. Let's start it off with the audio. When you listen to a new song using a music player such as Spotify or Google Play Music, the media notifications will now have color coding, meaning that these notifications will be themed based on the album art or video thumbnails. Not only that, but the thumbnail now fades into the notification, and this allows the album art to get noticeably larger while still leaving a decent amount of space for the title and author of the work. It looks pretty and it makes it easier to identify the notification right away. Another addition to the audio is that developers now have a new tool to perform audio transitions and effects known as Volume Shaper. For example, when you're listening to a song on Spotify and you start playing a YouTube video, the audio on Spotify will fade out for a seamless transition instead of abruptly stopping. It also works when you switch between music players, and hopefully when more developers hop on this feature, you'll see it included within apps. The second hidden feature is pretty well known, but it's still worth noting. You now have the option to modify icon shapes within the Pixel launcher. You won't be able to theme every icon yet, but most of the popular ones are supported. You can change them to a square, rounded square, squircel, and teardrop. It is a small change, but still, there is probably someone out there who will enjoy this. If you're tired of toggling the Wi-Fi on when you get home or at a regular location, you now don't have to remember. Within the Wi-Fi settings under Wi-Fi preferences, there is a feature known as turn on Wi-Fi automatically, which will automatically switch Wi-Fi on when you get near a trusted network. It works based on your location, and it works just fine since Google already knows where your Wi-Fi networks are. These next couple of hidden features have to do with the battery. Within this huge update, Google has focused on improving battery life by clamping down on what apps can do in the background. So when you go into the battery settings and tap on that three-dotted menu, there is now an option called Show App Usage, which will show you how much juice an app has used with a percentage next to it, the amount of time you actually used it, and the amount of time it's been running in the background. It really helps determine which of those suckers are battery draining without you even using them. Another hidden option is you can force old apps that are not targeting Android Oreo to follow Google's new background execution limits. Basically, Google imposed new rules on what apps can do in the background to squeeze in more battery life, but these new conditions only apply to apps which have Android Oreo support in mind. If you want older apps that are not supporting Android Oreo to follow these rules, you just need to open the app's info page, tap battery usage, and enable background activity. Even though this can break the app's notifications and similar functionality, it is useful if the app won't stop draining your battery in the background. Also, you can enable the battery percentage in the status bar under the battery settings, just in case if you were wondering. The text selection dialog also got a bit smarter. When you highlight some random text, you get the standard copy/paste buttons, but it starts to get interesting when you highlight something like a phone number, URL, or street address. It now shows icons and contextual actions to save you from the whole copy and paste step. For example, if you select an address, the dialog will have the option to search the address on Google Maps, or if it's a phone number, you can quickly launch it within the phone app. Another significant change in Android Oreo is the notifications. One small feature that I really enjoy is that you can now compact persistent notifications to a small gray line. This compact look causes much less visual clutter and makes it easier to see which notifications are important and need to be acted on, and which ones are there just for an FYI or for a service to run. Notification channels is also a feature that I wanted to touch base on. This aims to give you more control over what notifications you want to see for a particular app. For example, in the app info panel for Google Maps under app notifications, I can disable certain notifications for a specific category. If I don't want to be persistently told that there is a business listing or to rate and review places, I can easily disable those notifications instead of disabling all of the notifications that come in from Google Maps. Lastly, you can also dismiss individual notifications for a certain amount of time and have it reappear again once the timer is up. The feature is called snooze, and it's handy for when you don't want that particular notification in your face, but you also don't want to forget about it either. For those of you who hate typing in the same password, profile information, or username, Android Oreo now has an autofill API. So if you use an app like LastPass, you won't have to worry about typing in your login information for any app, as it can do it for you with a tap of a button. Well, this video is already getting way too long, so I'll just quickly name some of the other minor hidden features. Android Oreo makes your phone reboot twice as fast. SMS 11-digit authentication code for apps will no longer show up in your messages. You can now easily add custom ringtones, alarm sounds, and notification sounds from within the settings. Multi-window now stays on the screen when you go to your home screen, so you can peek into the window instead of just having the status bar be color coordinated. You get quick access to the apps widget by long pressing the icon, and there's a slider for the night light feature to customize the intensity.